They shined on screen, but what final wishes did they leave behind? Could a single clause rewrite their legacy? These shocking and bizarre celebrity wills will leave you speechless. Let's dive into the 17 strangest details found in the wills of Hollywood's golden era icons. Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini, the legendary escape artist and illusionist, was famous for defying death in his performances. But even in his final moments, he left behind one of the most bizarre and intriguing celebrity wills in history. Houdini, who died in 1926, was obsessed with the supernatural. While he spent much of his later career debunking fraudulent spiritualists, he remained open to the possibility that a genuine connection with the afterlife could exist. This fascination led to a highly unusual detail in his will, a secret coded message that he arranged to send from beyond the grave. Before his death, Houdini and his beloved wife, Bess, devised a secret 10-word message that only she knew. He promised that if there was any way to communicate from the afterlife, he would use this phrase to prove that life after death was real. For 10 years, Bess faithfully held seances, hoping to receive her husband's coded message. The events attracted widespread public interest, with spiritualists and skeptics alike eager to see if Houdini could truly escape the final trap of mortality. On the 10th anniversary of his death in 1936, Bess held her final seance on the rooftop of the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood. With cameras rolling, she dramatically declared, "Houdini did not come through." Though Houdini never successfully returned, his will had an enduring impact on the world of magic and mysticism. His detailed instructions for exposing fraudulent mediums, his public challenge to the supernatural, and his deeply personal test of the afterlife have kept his legend alive for nearly a century. Fred Astaire.
Probably trying to figure a way to get out of it.
Do you really think so?
You know you would, and so would I.
Fred Astaire, the legendary dancer and actor, was known for his effortless grace on the dance floor and his ability to make even the most complicated routines look easy. His will contained an unusual clause that revealed his deep distrust of how celebrities were often exploited after death. Astaire, who passed away in 1987, left behind a carefully crafted will that ensured his image and likeness could never be used for commercial purposes after his death. His decision stemmed from a lifelong belief that an artist's work should stand on its own and not be manipulated for profit after they were gone. His will stated explicitly that his name, likeness, and dance routines could not be used in ways that would diminish his artistic integrity. This clause made headlines at the time, as it was one of the strongest legal protections any celebrity had ever placed on their posthumous image. However, in a surprising twist, this ironclad rule was broken in 1997, 10 years after Astaire's death, when his widow, Robin Smith Astaire, sold the rights to his image for a commercial featuring a digitally recreated version of him dancing with a vacuum cleaner. This decision outraged Astaire's longtime fans and critics alike, who felt that the ad violated his explicit wishes. Beyond this strict control of his image, Astaire's will also contained provisions that demonstrated his devotion to his family. He left a significant portion of his estate to his children, ensuring they would be financially secure. He also left sentimental personal items to close friends and longtime collaborators. Mary Pickford. Mary Pickford, known as America's sweetheart, was one of the most influential figures of early Hollywood. As a pioneering actress, producer, and co-founder of United Artists, her final wishes revealed an unexpectedly reclusive and deeply personal side, as well as some peculiar details about how she wanted her legacy handled after her passing. One of the strangest aspects of Pickford's will was her insistence on extreme privacy, even in death. In her will, she made it clear that she did not want a large, elaborate funeral. Instead, she requested a small, private service attended only by close family members. This was a stark contrast to the grand Hollywood send-offs many of her contemporaries received. However, by the time of her death in 1979, Pickford had become increasingly isolated, and the once grand estate had fallen into disrepair. In her will, she included strict instructions that her personal belongings and memorabilia housed at Pickfair should not be publicly displayed or sold. Financially, Pickford's will was generous but selective. While she had amassed immense wealth throughout her career, she left most of her fortune to charity, with a significant portion allocated to support the Motion Picture and Television Fund. She had long been a supporter of the cause, and her final act of generosity ensured that those who had dedicated their lives to Hollywood would receive financial and medical assistance. One of the more personal and unexpected details in her will was her decision to leave a portion of her estate to her longtime staff members. Her housekeepers, assistants, and even a few former employees received financial gifts as a token of gratitude. Perhaps the most curious aspect of her will, however, was a set of sealed letters addressed to specific individuals, including some of her former Hollywood colleagues. The mystery surrounding these letters only added to the intrigue of Pickford's final years. W.C. Fields.
Is there any goulash on this menu?
W.C. Fields, the legendary comedian known for his sharp wit, disdain for authority, and love of alcohol, left behind one of the most bizarre and fittingly humorous wills in Hollywood history. Fields maintained his eccentric personality even in death. His will contained unusual clauses that reflected his deep-rooted distrust of people. One of the strangest details in Fields' will was his insistence that a portion of his fortune be set aside to establish a home for orphaned children, under one condition: no preachers allowed. His will explicitly stated that any orphanage benefiting from his money must not involve religious figures in its operations. Another bizarre request was his dedication of a separate sum of money to provide for the care and well-being of stray dogs. His will ensured that even after his death, his love for animals would continue through charitable contributions to animal welfare organizations. Fields' will also contained a somewhat petty but amusing final act of defiance. He reportedly left nothing to certain estranged relatives whom he had feuded with over the years. Perhaps the most mysterious and humorous element of his will was a supposed clause that stated a hidden stash of money had been left somewhere, waiting to be discovered. Though no official record of such a clause exists, speculation about hidden caches of Fields' fortune persisted long after his death, adding a final touch of intrigue to the legacy of one of comedy's greatest stars. Barbara Stanwyck.
I'm certainly sorry.
You didn't. You can just take me right down to my cabin for another pair of slippers.
Barbara Stanwyck, one of the toughest and most versatile actresses of Hollywood's golden age, was known for her sharp wit, no-nonsense attitude, and a career spanning over 5 decades. One of the most peculiar aspects of Stanwyck's will was the fact that she left virtually nothing to her only adopted son, Dion Anthony Fay. Dion had reportedly been a rebellious and troubled child, often clashing with Stanwyck, who raised him as a single mother after divorcing actor Robert Taylor. Will reflected her deep appreciation for those who had stood by her. One of the most surprising beneficiaries was her assistant, whom she treated almost like a surrogate daughter. Another curious detail was that Stanwyck left a portion of her estate to animal charities. She was a passionate advocate for animal welfare, particularly for the humane treatment of horses. Her love of horses had been a lifelong passion, and she ensured that part of her wealth would go toward their care, even after she was gone. Stanwyck's will also left out any mention of her former husband, Robert Taylor, even though he had been one of the great loves of her life. Their divorce in 1951 had been painful, but she had reportedly never fully moved on, further reinforcing her desire to keep her past in the past. Gary Cooper.
Listen, the judge has left town, Harvey's quit, and I'm having trouble getting deputies.
Gary Cooper was the epitome of the classic Hollywood leading man, rugged, stoic, and effortlessly charismatic. He was one of the most beloved actors of his generation. However, when his will was revealed after his passing in 1961, it contained a surprising and somewhat scandalous detail. When Cooper's will was made public, it was revealed that he had left behind a generous financial provision for an unnamed close friend. While the legal documents did not explicitly name Neil, his widow, Rocky, reportedly fought hard to protect Cooper's legacy and maintain her dignity, refusing to publicly acknowledge any infidelity. Cooper's will also contained some more conventional details. He left the majority of his estate to his wife and daughter, ensuring they would be well taken care of. He also made charitable donations to organizations he had supported during his lifetime, particularly Catholic charities. Even decades later, biographers and Hollywood historians continue to speculate about who exactly received this secret inheritance. Patricia Neal herself never confirmed whether she had been named, though she did speak fondly of Cooper in later interviews, admitting that she had loved him deeply. Gloria Swanson.
I am big. It's the pictures.
Gloria Swanson, the iconic star of Sunset Boulevard and a defining actress of the silent film era, was known for her dramatic flair, lavish lifestyle, and devotion to maintaining her image as a Hollywood legend. One of the most bizarre details of her will was her insistence on being buried with a collection of personal items, some of which had deep sentimental value, while others were simply strange. But the most striking detail of Swanson's will had less to do with material possessions and more with her lasting message to Hollywood. Financially, Swanson's will contained an unexpected twist. While many assumed she had amassed a great fortune, her extravagant lifestyle had taken its toll, and her estate was not as vast as expected. One of the more sentimental aspects of her will was her decision to leave her private diaries to a trusted confidant rather than her immediate family. Some historians speculate that they contained secrets about her rumored affairs with powerful figures, including Joseph Kennedy Sr. and Charlie Chaplin. She wanted her defining role as the tragic and forgotten silent film star Norma Desmond to be remembered in a private, intimate setting, just as she had intended her legacy to be preserved. Rudolph Valentino. Rudolph Valentino, Hollywood's first great heartthrob and the ultimate silent film lover, left behind one of the most mysterious and bizarre wills in Golden Age history. One of the most unsettling details in Valentino's will was the eerie sense that he had foreseen his own death. Just a year before his passing, he had confided in friends that he believed he would not live a long life, and his will reflected this strangely prophetic mindset. However, the most shocking omission was his longtime companion and rumored fiancée, actress Pola Negri. Yet, Valentino's will made no mention of her, leading to speculation that either their relationship was not as serious as she had portrayed it, or that he had simply not updated his will in time. Even more peculiar was the fact that Valentino left a significant portion of his estate to his manager and close friend, George Ullman, rather than his family. Another bizarre element of Valentino's will involved an undisclosed mystery woman. Some reports suggested that he had bequeathed a sum of money to an anonymous woman, described in vague terms within the document. Over the years, numerous women came forward, claiming to be the secret beneficiary, but no concrete evidence ever surfaced. Adding to the strangeness, after Valentino's death, his estate was managed in a way that allowed him to remain a financial success after his passing. Perhaps the most unsettling posthumous mystery tied to Valentino's will was the legend of the Lady in Black. Every year on the anniversary of his death, a veiled woman would visit his crypt at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, leaving behind a single red rose. While many believed this was a devoted fan, some speculated that it was someone directly linked to Valentino's will, perhaps the anonymous beneficiary or a former lover who had been cut out of his estate. Joan Crawford.
We've got to convince the audience that this character could recite Three Blind Mice to Laura, and she would think it was the most romantic poem in the world.
Joan Crawford was one of Hollywood's most iconic leading ladies, known for her striking beauty, intense screen presence, and steely determination. When her will was revealed after her death in 1977, it sent shockwaves through Hollywood, not because of what she left behind, but because of who she left out. In one of the most infamous details of any celebrity will, Crawford specifically disinherited 2 of her 4 adopted children, Christina and Christopher. This unusual decision fueled speculation about the deep rift between Crawford and her children. Crawford's will was not entirely devoid of generosity, however. She left the majority of her estate, valued at around $2 million, to her 2 youngest adopted daughters, Cindy and Kathy. She also made charitable donations to organizations such as the Motion Picture and Television Fund and various medical research institutions. Despite these acts of generosity, it was her harsh exclusion of Christina and Christopher that dominated headlines. Following Crawford's death, Christina attempted to challenge the will in court. In the end, she and Christopher received a small, undisclosed settlement, but nowhere near the inheritance they might have expected had they remained in their mother's good graces. Douglas Fairbanks Sr.
Yes, well, I didn't get into the Royal Academy, but I exhibited, yes.
Douglas Fairbanks Sr., the swashbuckling king of silent Hollywood, his larger-than-life persona extended to his personal life, and his will contained some peculiar and unexpected details that reflected both his adventurous spirit and his deep ties to the golden age of cinema. One of the strangest aspects of Fairbanks' will was his request that his ashes be scattered in multiple locations. However, his most surprising final wish was related to Pickfair, the grand estate he shared with his former wife, Mary Pickford. Even though they had divorced years before his death, Fairbanks maintained a sentimental attachment to the home they had built together. In his will, he made an unusual request. He wanted a specific section of Pickfair's garden to be maintained in his honor, even if the estate changed ownership, as Pickfair was later sold and underwent major renovations. Financially, Fairbanks' will reflected his generous nature. He left a substantial sum to his only son, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., but he also allocated funds to assist struggling actors. This act of generosity was a testament to Fairbanks' commitment to the industry, which made him a star. Another peculiar aspect of his will was his collection of swords and fencing equipment. Rather than leaving them to museums or studios, he specifically bequeathed them to select friends and colleagues. Each recipient was given a sword with a personalized note, many of which contained humorous messages encouraging them to continue the fight. Perhaps the most poetic request in Fairbanks' will was his wish for his epitaph. He wanted the words, "Good night, sweet prince," inscribed on his tomb, a reference to Hamlet, ensuring that his departure was just as dramatic as the performances that had made him a legend. Humphrey Bogart.
I'm sorry, Slim. But I still say you're awful good.
Humphrey Bogart, the ultimate embodiment of classic Hollywood cool, left behind a legacy of unforgettable performances, but when he passed away in 1957 at the age of 57, the details of his will contained some unexpected and even slightly bizarre surprises. At the time of his death, Bogart was married to actress Lauren Bacall, his great love and longtime co-star. However, despite their close bond, Bogart's will contained provisions that raised eyebrows. While Bacall was certainly a beneficiary, Bogart made sure that his beloved sailing yacht, Santana, was not left to her but instead to his business manager. Some speculate that this was because he knew Bacall wouldn't use the yacht in the same way he did, while others suggest it was simply a pragmatic decision. Another unusual detail in Bogart's will was his insistence on his funeral arrangements. Unlike the grand, elaborate ceremonies many Golden Age stars had, Bogart wanted something simple. However, one of the most notable and peculiar elements of his funeral was that a small gold whistle was buried with him. The whistle, which was a nod to the have and have not, had sentimental value between him and Bacall. Jack Benny.
A sort of a floor show, you know what I mean, sing and dance or something, and that way we can get the cover charge too, you know. For the...
Jack Benny was one of the most beloved entertainers of the 20th century, known for his impeccable comedic timing, his signature violin playing, and his famously frugal on-screen persona. Benny was a staple of radio, television, and film. When Benny passed away in 1974 at the age of 80, his estate was estimated to be worth millions. However, the most touching and unusual detail in his will wasn't about money. It was about love. Benny made arrangements for his wife, Mary Livingstone, to receive a single red rose every day for the rest of her life. While his stage persona often played up his supposed cheapness, in reality, Benny was known for his generosity and devotion to his wife. He and Mary had been married for nearly 50 years, and despite their occasional spats, some of which became part of their comedic routines, their love endured. Benny's estate was well organized, ensuring that his wealth was distributed smoothly to his wife, daughter, and charitable causes he had supported throughout his life. Beyond the roses, Benny also left money to various charities, including the Motion Picture Relief Fund and hospitals he had supported during his lifetime. Carol Lombard.
You're complete. The most horrible excuse for a human being that ever walked on two legs.
the queen of screwball comedy, was beloved for her sharp wit, dazzling beauty, and effortless comedic timing. She was also deeply devoted to her country, tragically dying in a plane crash in 1942 while returning from a war bond rally. One of the most unusual clauses in Lombard's will was a provision dedicated to her pets. A lifelong animal lover, she left a substantial portion of her estate specifically for the care of her beloved dogs, ensuring that they would be well taken care of for the rest of their lives, showing her meticulous attention to detail and unwavering love for animals. Another fascinating aspect of Lombard's will was her treatment of her husband, Clark Gable. Lombard had made sure to provide for him financially, leaving him personal keepsakes, including love letters and mementos from their time together. However, what truly stood out was a handwritten note she left for Gable, discovered among her personal effects. The note reportedly contained words of encouragement and love, urging him to move forward with his life and continue his career. She had always been generous with her money, frequently donating to charitable causes, especially during World War II. One of the strangest provisions in her will was a request for a fun and lively memorial service, rather than a somber funeral. However, due to the tragic nature of her death, this wish was not entirely fulfilled. Her funeral was a sorrowful affair, with Hollywood's biggest stars attending to pay their respects. Greta Garbo.
You're afraid of me, aren't you? I'm not gonna hurt you, really. Please sit over here.
Greta Garbo, the enigmatic Swedish actress who became one of Hollywood's most legendary stars, maintained her mysterious nature even in death. Garbo was known for her reclusive lifestyle, famously uttering the phrase, "I want to be alone." When the details of her final wishes became public, they revealed a mix of secrecy, immense wealth, and a few unexpected surprises. One of the most bizarre aspects of Garbo's will was the sheer fortune she had accumulated. What made Garbo's will particularly strange, however, was who she chose to inherit her immense wealth. Despite being one of the most desired women in Hollywood, instead of dividing her estate among a wide group of beneficiaries, she left the majority of her fortune to her niece, Gray Ricefield. Another unusual detail was Garbo's private collection of letters and personal writings. Some fans and historians were disappointed that her will did not include specific instructions on what to do with these personal documents, leaving their fate uncertain. Garbo's will also reflected her continued detachment from her home country of Sweden. While many Swedish fans had hoped she would leave behind a legacy donation to her homeland, she did not allocate any funds for Swedish charities or institutions. This was in keeping with her decades-long reluctance to return to Sweden, despite her enduring status as one of the country's most famous exports. Marlene Dietrich.
Oh, that? No, I'm not married. I just wear it when I'm working. Gives me a little protection with all the men.
Marlene Dietrich was one of Hollywood's most enigmatic and glamorous stars, known for her sultry screen presence, androgynous style, and effortless ability to captivate audiences worldwide. Off-screen, she was equally fascinating. An independent woman who defied gender norms, had a complicated love life, and maintained an air of mystery, even in her later years. When she passed away in 1992 at the age of 90, her will revealed some truly unusual details that perfectly reflected her unique personality and sharp wit. One of the strangest aspects of Dietrich's will was the fact that she left almost no money to her family. Instead, the bulk of her estate, including her massive collection of letters, photographs, costumes, and film memorabilia, was left to the city of Berlin. A surprising decision given her long history of strained relations with her homeland. Her decision to be buried in Berlin was equally perplexing to some. Despite living most of her life in Paris and New York, Dietrich's final resting place was the German capital, where she was laid to rest next to her mother. This was seen as a symbolic reconciliation with the country she had once rejected. But Dietrich's will wasn't all about grand political statements. There were also a few deeply personal and eccentric details. She also made sure to leave specific instructions regarding her wardrobe, which had always been an essential part of her carefully curated image. Her iconic gowns, suits, and accessories were meticulously cataloged and donated to museums, ensuring that her influence on fashion would endure long after her passing. Her family followed her wishes, holding only a small, private ceremony with minimal press coverage, an unusual request for someone who had spent decades in the public eye. Jean Harlow.
I ain't stopping you.
You bet you ain't.
Jean Harlow, the original blonde bombshell, was one of the brightest stars of 1930s Hollywood. With her platinum blonde hair, magnetic screen presence, and effortless charm, she died at just 26 years old due to kidney failure. Her sudden passing shocked Hollywood, and her will contained some truly bizarre and heartbreaking details that revealed both her youthful innocence and the control others had over her life, even in death. One of the strangest aspects of Harlow's will was the fact that she barely had control over her own finances. One of the most shocking revelations in her will was that she left almost everything to her mother, including the bulk of her estate, personal belongings, and any residual earnings from her films. Another eerie and tragic detail was that Harlow had reportedly told friends that she wished to be buried next to her second husband, producer Paul Byrne, who had died under mysterious circumstances just a few years earlier. Adding to the strange details, Harlow was buried in the glamorous white gown she had worn in Libeled Lady, complete with gardenias placed in her hands. The choice of attire seemed to emphasize the image of Harlow as Hollywood's white angel. Even though she had always been far more vibrant and full of life than the ethereal figure her mother and the studio attempted to present. John Wayne.
But I'll talk to you just this once. You're not just getting started. The line's been drawn.
John Wayne, the ultimate symbol of rugged American masculinity, left behind a legacy as one of Hollywood's most legendary stars. But when he passed away in 1979 at the age of 72, his will contained some truly unexpected, and in some cases, downright strange details. One of the most unusual aspects of Wayne's will was his insistence on a Catholic burial, despite having lived much of his life as a non-practicing Protestant. He was buried at Pacific View Memorial Park in California, but his grave remained unmarked for over 2 decades. Another strange posthumous detail. His oldest son, Michael, was named the executor of the estate, receiving both power and a significant financial portion. Meanwhile, his daughter Isa, who had been particularly close to Wayne in his later years, received a more modest amount. Another strange provision in his will involved his extensive gun collection. Instead of donating or selling the collection outright, he carefully designated who would receive each specific piece, dividing them among close friends, business associates, and family members. One of the most valuable guns, a Colt .45 revolver he used in several of his westerns, was given to his son Ethan. One of the more touching and lesser-known aspects of his will was Wayne's creation of the John Wayne Cancer Foundation. Having suffered from stomach cancer in his final years, he ensured that part of his fortune would go toward cancer research and treatment, especially for children. Whether it was strange burial requests, unexpected snubs, or bizarre bequests, these final wishes offer a fascinating glimpse into the personal lives of cinema's greatest legends. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep the spirit of classic Hollywood alive.